because I'm tired.
Okay, Chairman, we are now live.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors and members of the public, to the Shadow Executive Committee, Northamptonshire Shadow Executive Committee. We'll get cracking with the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence. Have we any?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies for absence from Councillor Stephen North and Councillor Tom Partridge Underwood.
Right, okay, thank you. Have we got anybody who's requested to speak tonight?
Yes, Chair, we have 3 speakers. We have Councillors Bundy, Hakewell and Stanborough. Thank you very much, yes. And they're all speaking.
A lucky guess.
Thank you.
Okay, has anybody else indicated they want to speak? Thank you. Members' declaration of interests? Don't think there are any. And we'll go straight to item 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November 2020. They're set out on pages 5 to 14 of the agenda pack. Are there any other comments in respect to their accuracy? Could I have a mover?
Move they be signed correct. I have to move those, Chair.
Got Wendy, and I've got Ian Jelly. Wendy moving, Ian Jelly seconding. Can you put your hands up tonight and keep them up until we've finished counting, please? Put your hands up, just be a good practice. Yeah, that's unanimous, thank you. Right, we come to agenda item 5A, General Fund Revenue Budget. And I'd like to invite Councillor Lloyd Bundy to address the meeting, please. Ben, if you could work your magic.
Okay, Councillor Bundy, if you would like to make your speech.
Thank you, Chair. Although the time to speak about the whole budget is at the end of the consultation at the meetings in January and February, there are issues relating to council tax that should be addressed now. It should be noted that even if a rise in council tax by the maximum allowed by legislation, Northamptonshire will still be one of the lowest council taxation authorities in the country. These are challenging times, but we should not blame all our woes on COVID-19. We should also not see the government as the knight in shining armour either. The spending review a few days ago had a headline of pumping some 2.1 billion into local government. Although this sounds good, only 350 million is new money coming from central government. Indeed, nationally, 1.6 billion of the 2.1 billion announced will come from the assumption of increasing council tax by the maximum allowed. So in essence, the burden of balancing this budget with many other budgets up and down the country lies with the council taxpayer. Council tax in any municipal area should not be by postcode. All council taxpayers, whether they live in Corby, Wellingborough, Thrapston or Kettering, should be treated equally. Harmonisation should be from day one. Likewise, any council tax support should be the same from the start. Any support is borne by the council taxpayer. Harmonising support at any level below 25% will add to this burden. 25% support means that taxpayers paying the full amount are also paying 75% for those claiming support. The council's responsibility does not end with the 75% though. Each local authority has a statutory responsibility to maintain extra funding for those who need it. This is called a Section 13A. However, the support system should not just be about financial handouts. We need to strengthen our social inclusion teams, not only to assist those people who struggle with paying their council tax, but help customers manage their own finances. This should include helping them to apply for additional funds that they may be entitled to, but unaware of. Liaising with partner agencies to get the best support available for their individual needs. The council's ethos should be to help customers to help themselves. Customers should be encouraged to engage with the social inclusion team and work with them to improve their financial position. The number of applicants for the Section 13A should be low, or we have failed. Although this is a challenging budget, if we get it right, it will set the foundation for the new authority for decades to come. If we fail, then the consequences are unthinkable for the residents of North Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. I now call for Councillor Hakewell to come to address the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. I sent some papers through just slightly short of the amount of time I had last Thursday to read the papers before suggesting I wanted to speak today. They can be read in the background after your meeting tonight. I think from the whole budget process...
We're not hearing you. We're not hearing you on occasions. Don't look to the right. We lose your voice.
I think, therefore, looking straight ahead, I'll pick my book up with my notes, that we have a massive task, and I think Councillor Bunday has set that out. But one of the things that worries me significantly is the parish and town precepts in the Kettering Borough area. And the document I've sent to you shows that they have been since 74 far lower than the other three authorities coming into harmonisation, ignoring the county level. If you look at the sort of rates that are being put forward across the county north, you will find that many of the town and parish councils, which were constantly told we're not looking at those precepts, that somebody living in Rothwell will pay much different to somebody living, for example, in Higham Ferrers. And that anomaly is Kettering. It's unique. It's probably unique across the country. And I don't believe that it has ever been discussed in the harmonisation group. And that's the background to the papers that I've put forward, that we should have had an audit. We were told that we were not going to get any changes to town and parish council precepts this year. And within days, election costs were placed on town and parish councils within the Kettering area without any debate at all from the executive. So I'm looking forward to being on the scrutiny of this budget, but I do think we have failed by not having someone on the council tax harmonisation who understood the Kettering Borough anomaly of very low precepts. It looks like the other districts are going to be subsidising Kettering town and parishes for the services that they have got from the borough in the past. You'll see that in the documents, and Leader, you know that, and Councillor Jelly will know that too. The paragraph 2.11 in your report, that paragraph could have been lifted from any county council cabinet report over the last 10 years. We've always known that that is the problem, the low precept level, and despite the county putting its precept up, we are still in the same problem. And it's my opinion that the two unitaries will suffer exactly the same problem that the county did, of being on that low base. And that's not been sorted by this budget or the two unitaries.
Winding up now, please.
So I would just simply like to suggest that we have not got to the core of the problem, that the budget is not safe in relation to those town and parishes in Kettering Borough. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to call on Chris Stamborough, Councillor Stamborough, to come and address the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to comment on a few things that jumped out at me when I read the paperwork last week about this budget. Obviously, there's going to be a process of scrutiny and consultation and time to go into stuff in a lot more detail. But, you know, picking out things like the nearly £10 million gap in next year of remaining savings requirement, for which we're relying on a fair financial settlement from the government. And history tells us that we shouldn't expect such a thing, doesn't it? So I hope you've got some thoughts in your backs of your heads about what you might do about any shortfall. And likewise, in the next 3 financial years, there are huge amounts of remaining savings requirements, totaling nearly £100 million, a big challenge, and something that's going to have to be worked on, because there are no proposals that I can see here to deal with those. Looking at page 4 of the report, paragraph 2.15, we're told the key themes that underpinning the draft budget as established by the Task and Finish group, the third one of which is a financially balanced budget for 21-22 and over the medium term, which isn't what you've got tonight. So looking forward to hearing more perhaps on that one from somebody at some point. And there's an interesting, very interesting paragraph on page 17 at 7.23. The second bullet point there refers to a cost pressure of local government reform and describes it as describes disaggregation of NCC baseline deficit £1 million in 21-22. Well, the cabinet member and the finance officers at Northamptonshire County Council keep telling us that the county is going to have a surplus at the end of 21-22. So I'm interested to find out what that refers to. Other things that aren't in there, I really would have liked to have seen the HRA now. I appreciate it's coming forward in January. It would have been good to have had it now. Nothing on reserves at all, not even a projection as to what you think they might be, which I would have thought would be possible, and I suspect somebody's done, but it would be nice if it had been shared so that we could see the best estimate currently of where reserves will lie. That's something that's going to be very important. And perhaps most crucially to many people, certainly in Corby, the local council tax reduction scheme and the 25% you're proposing that people will have to find there. In Corby, that's going to mean people paying over 3 times as much as they currently do if they're on that benefit. A huge increase, yet there's no proposal for a discretionary fund to help people through that financial trauma. And I really think that's something that does need to be added to this budget. So thanks for allowing me to comment. I would encourage everyone who can to get involved in the consultation and have their say. Many thanks.
Thank you for that. Thank you for both councillors Bundy, Hakewill and Stamborough. Right, Ben takes you back to the waiting room. Okay. Before I go on to the next little bit, I'd like to welcome Teresa. Teresa has joined us. You're very welcome to the meeting. And I'd now like to go to Glenn Hammonds, the interim Section 151 officer, who's going to speak to this part of the presentation tonight.
Thank you very much, Chair. Okay, so members, the report that we've got in front of us this evening is the first draft revenue budget and medium-term financial plan for Northamptonshire Council. The draft budget and medium-term financial plan is to be consulted on between the 11th of December and the 29th of January. Responses from the consultation and also the input of overview and scrutiny will then be considered at the Shadow Executive meeting on the 10th of February, ahead of the final budget being considered at Shadow Authority on the 25th of February, alongside any decision on the level of council tax. The draft budget and medium-term financial plan for Northamptonshire has been one of the most challenging budgets to develop in the country. Any normal local authority budget process is never easy, but for Northamptonshire's budget has been developed at a time when there's a global pandemic going on and the uncertainties that that brings, and also with local government reform happening across Northamptonshire and the creation of a new council. The approach taken in terms of developing the draft budget is set out in sections 6 to 12 of the report. To briefly summarise these, the approach that has been taken is first of all to disaggregate the NCC baseline and aggregate the North share of that with the North District and Boroughs budgets. This has created a baseline for Northamptonshire to develop its budget from. It has then considered a series of pressures and efficiencies against that baseline. Particular pressures to mention are certainly in relation to COVID. From a efficiencies and a savings perspective, when I've been talking to you at previous meetings with regards to the Future Northants programme and the benefits that are being realised out of them, the impact of those have also been factored into the budget that you've got in front of you this evening from a draft perspective. The budget also looks at harmonising the levels of council tax across Northamptonshire, and also proposes some of the fees and charges are also harmonised. There's one area of the report I'd just like to put in an extra clarification on due to some of the ambiguous wording within the report. I'd just like to refer members to paragraphs 7.7 and 7.9. Within 7.7 on adult services, the projected inflation description there has been £6.3 million factored into the budget as an increase next year. There are two reasons for that. Firstly, the increase in care costs for existing placements, which are estimated at 6% for next year. That's based on the 4-year trend total that has been seen historically. The 6.3 million also includes the increase in acute care needs of existing individuals where these have changed since the previous budget. And then just to clarify that paragraph 7.9 incorporates any estimated growth in additional clients of £1 million. And both of those have been factored into the projections and pressures on the budget going forwards. At the time of speaking, we are still awaiting our funding allocations from government. These are expected to be received next week, sometime between the 14th and the 17th of December. However, where possible, we've sought to estimate how much government funding allocations we may receive. And these have been factored into the budget where we can. This draft budget includes a greater than normal level of risk due to a number of areas, in particular, COVID pressures, the potential volatility in adults and children's social care, and also the impacts of local government reform. To assist with that, in mitigating those risks, appropriate contingencies and contributions to reserves have been incorporated into the draft budget to assist in managing those potential financial uncertainties. The draft budget as it stands for consultation is a net budget of £284.8 million. Within that are factored around £35 million worth of pressures, £17 million worth of efficiencies and savings. And the budget also includes an increase in council tax of to 4.99%. That 4.99% is the maximum allowed increase that the government announced as part of the spending review, and includes a 3% adult social care precept and also a 1.99% increase in line with the proposed referendum limits. There is a funding gap of just under £10 million that we still need to close between now and the final budget being proposed in February. Announcements next week out of the local government finance settlement are awaited, and we're also continuing to develop further efficiencies ahead of the final budget in February. An update will be provided on the draft budget at the Shadow Executive meeting on the 7th of January, where we will report what the impact of that local government finance settlement is on the draft budget that's set in front of us this evening. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Glenn. I'd now like to open the debate up for any questions or comments. Could you use your electronic hands? Let's try and do it that way, and that's hopefully will. I've got nobody showing any inclination. Jean Addison. Hi, Jean.
Thank you, Chair. This has been and will be a very difficult budget for us to set for the next year, and I wanted to thank officers and the members that have been working on this, because it's been a very, very difficult budget. My hope is, Chair, that with going through scrutiny and the public consultation, we may be able to fill the gaps, because there are gaps in this budget, Chair, and there are some winners and losers, and I'm hoping that the consultation will flag those up and give us some opportunity to make changes to the budget. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jean. I've got Tom now, Tom Beattie.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just concur with what Councillor Addison has just said about the challenges, and the thanks to the work of the officers and members who put this draft budget together. What I would ask, and it's probably like asking someone to look into a crystal ball, but with the budget deficit and the impending local government finance settlement, is there any room for optimism that the local government finance settlement will go towards plugging at least part, of not all of that gap? And that may just be asking for an opinion about how we see this playing out over the next week or so.
Glenn, would you like to see if you can comment on that?
Certainly, Chair, yes. In terms of Councillor Beattie's comments there, I certainly haven't got a crystal ball. I mean, to understand what is in that settlement for Northamptonshire when it is announced. But there were a number of areas from the spending review where it wasn't, we weren't able to estimate how much resource we may get here in Northamptonshire, in Northamptonshire. And what we've continued to do is keep the dialogue going with MHCLG. And we continue to work with them in order to try and maximise the amount of resource that we do get here in Northamptonshire.
Did you want to come back on that, Tom?
No, thank you. It was a very difficult question, and I don't have any greater insight than what Glenn has just demonstrated. I think we just need to wait and see what comes out of the funding settlement. just that it is difficult to make those sort of accurate predictions, given that we don't know what that's likely to be. But we are where we are, I suppose.
We are, as
Chair.
you know, Tom, keeping the dialogue going with the government.
I think Teresa wanted to.
Chair, I was just, if I may, just a very short comment, just to reinforce what Glenn has said. We are in discussion with colleagues in government around the settlement and the gap. And, you know, you've published your budget for tonight, which is very helpful in that it's in the public domain. So they know that we're facing a substantial gap in the north. And, you know, they are very supportive. I would reinforce that they are very supportive. So I'm very hopeful. I know it's difficult and Glenn is right. Nobody has a crystal ball, but I am very hopeful that we will get a decent settlement next week.
Thank you for that, Teresa. It really is useful to hear those words. Has anybody else got anything they'd like to say, or anybody else want to ask a question? Got nobody saying they want to say anything at the moment. Did you want to say anything, Ian?
Yes, Chair, thank you very much. Yeah, firstly, thank you to our three speakers this evening, and we will make notes of their comments from all of them, and obviously we will factor those into the budget where we possibly can. The report before us tonight is the first draft of the first ever budget for the new Northamptonshire Unitary Council. This report focuses on the Council's general fund budget and the medium-term financial plan. The housing revenue will be considered a shadow executive meeting on the 7th of January. Producing a new budget hasn't been without its challenges. This is a new budget for a new council and is the culmination of all of the services, the budgets, reserves, debts, etc. from 5 councils rolled into one. It encompasses the disaggregation of part of the current county council budget and the aggregation of the 4 borough and district councils in the north, and everything that goes with that to produce a new budget that will be fit for purpose for the people of Northamptonshire. The creation of a new council provides the opportunity to transfer and improve local services, and the new council will work with businesses and other partners for economic recovery following the pandemic and promote future growth. The draft budget and the medium-term financial plan has been developed with mind. Getting to this has taken a amount of work, officers and members over the last 10 months. The Task and Finish group have met on 9 occasions, and we have had reports presented on every aspect of budget and the council tax support for our deliberation. A special thanks has to go to Glenn Hammonds, Mark Dickinson, Sean Darcy, Lucy Hogston and James Smith, also supported by Janice Gotts and Rob Bridge. And sincere thanks go to many other members of staff for an exceptional job in putting all of the details of this budget together. My thanks go to the colleagues on the Task and Finish group, Councillors Graham Lawson, beg your pardon, David Brackenbury, Alexandra Wellings and Ray Beebe, and colleagues from the Future Northampton Finance Programme team for their support in this process. The revenue budget currently sits at 284.7 million. If we include the designated school grant, they total just over £600 million. The 2 biggest services which impact on this budget are from adults and children's social care services. It is recognised that we will continue to face significant budget pressures for our local government finances. The report shows that we currently have an £18 million gap in balancing this budget. It helps to close this gap. We have provisionally indicated we will need to increase council tax by just under 5%. The proposed increase in council tax will realise approximately £8 million and would reduce that gap to just under 10 million. Council tax income is vital to the ongoing financial sustainability of the council and delivery of services to its residents, alongside investments in its neighbourhood and no new service cuts. We have seen a significant impact over the last year on our budgets and income in all councils with the impact of COVID. Impact of reducing collection rates of council tax and business rates. We still have the uncertainty of what, if any, additional we may get from government to compensate this impact. And we continue to work and government to ensure that we get the right support to deliver our new council's services. We're also waiting for the details of the financial settlement, as already been said, later this month, and details of those announcements will need to be factored into this budget. Having said all of that, we are convinced that we have made a really positive steps forward and are putting things in place to produce a budget that is fit for purpose and gives us the best chance to maintain and improve our service delivery in the years to come. This budget is a working document, not yet the finished article, and during the consultation process, which runs from the 11th of December to the 29th of January, we will still be working hard, looking at efficiencies, revising and finessing to reduce that budget gap. Looking to the future, our plans and commitment is to deliver quality and value for money services for our residents, which they expect and deserve. These are challenging times for individuals and communities, and we want to work with you to help and support you in whatever way we can. We will ensure that we work closely with the voluntary and community sector to support our most vulnerable people. Mr. Chairman, during the consultation process for this budget, I would urge all residents, stakeholders and partners, please get involved and have your say. We want to engage with the public and listen to you, your thoughts, your concerns and your comments. The recommendation in this report is item 3, and we're not making any decisions this evening, Chair. The recommendation is to note that the draft budget will go out for consultation on Friday, the 11th of December. Thank you very much, Chair.
So nobody else is looking as oh, Martin Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it's been said, this is a very challenging budget, but we must do all we can to not only deliver services to protect the most vulnerable people in our society, especially in view of the unique circumstances that we find ourselves in. I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Have a mover, have a seconder? Ian Jelly. Right, show of hands, please. If you could just keep your hands up while we count them to make sure we've...
Unanimous, Chairman.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Chair.
We now come on to item 5B, Capital Strategy and Programme. And I now call Councillor Hakewell to come in.
It's okay, Chair. All three were just speaking on the previous item.
Oh, that would have been fascinating to hear, but there you go. I'll go straight over. To invite Glenn Hammonds, the interim Section 151 officer, who will speak to this part of the report. Glenn.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this report sets out the draft capital strategy and draft capital programme for Northamptonshire. There will be a 7-week consultation and also consideration of it by overview and scrutiny ahead of it being considered for approval at the Shadow Authority meeting on the 25th of February. The capital strategy sets out the key principles and provides the framework for the Council's capital investment plans. The key principles are set out in para 5.2 of the report, and the capital strategy also includes the proposed governance process for the approval and the development of new schemes through their life cycle. The capital programme itself totals just over £200 million over the next 4 years. and is split into 3 different elements. Firstly, there is the baseline programme. This contains those live projects which have been started by the sovereign councils and will be concluded after the 1st of April by Northamptonshire Council. And these total about £54 million. There is the development pool, which contains 37 schemes totaling £99 million, which will be considered by the new council and moved forward through the aforementioned proposed governance process, which forms part of the capital strategy. And finally, there is also the HRA capital programme, which looks at the investment in the council's housing stock and totals £48 million. That concludes my introduction to the report. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Thank you for that, Glenn. I would now like to widen the discussion. Let me just get the... Is there anybody that wants to ask a question, make a comment? Nobody? In that, Wendy.
Again, as before, just thank you for officers' work and urge members of the public and stakeholders to respond to the consultation.
Yep, well said.
Thank you.
Martin Griffiths.
Yeah, I second those comments by Councillor Brackenbury, and also we are fortunate to have very sound financial councils in place in Northamptonshire. And what we now need to do is do that amalgamation, if you like, of all of our assets to do the very best for the whole of Northamptonshire. And I think this is the way forward, Chairman.
Yes. Thank you for that. Is there anybody else that wants to say anything?
Councillor Jelly.
Councillor Jelly?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I haven't got a lot to add to what Glenn said, but delivery of a long-term programme is affordable and sustainable is vitally important looking to the future development for the new council. To ensure that council's resources and external borrowing are utilised to fund capital expenditure where the delivery of council's financial sustainability. It should also take into account external influences such as SEMLEP, the Oxford and Cambridge ARC, health and joint working with other partner authorities to help and support going forward. The recommendations again are that we are not making a decision this evening, Chair, but that we will note the report will go out to consultation on the 11th of December with the revenue budget as well. Thank you.
Right. It appears nobody else wants to say anything, so could I have a mover?
I'll move that, Chair.
Jelly, a seconder. Jason Smithers seconds it. Could we have a show of hands, please? Keep your hands up so we can.
That's unanimous, Chair.
That's unanimous. Thank you for that. I'd just like at this stage just to say something, just say a few words. It is important that everybody has the opportunity to see and comment on the draft budget at this early stage. I'm extremely grateful that we have managed to get to this point, although it is important to recognise that the budget still has many moving parts and will evolve further over the coming weeks. But if we all engage positively in it, then we will bring something forward that is really rather good and special. Okay. Thank you for tonight. I have no exempt items or any other business, so I'll bring the meeting